Welcome back, D-Live Nation. We are here, and we are joined by Veronica Tan. Veronica works in Singapore. She's going to tell you a little bit more about exactly what she does there. Veronica, please say hi to the D-Live Nation.
Hi everyone, I'm Veronica from the Infocomm Media Development Agency, which is the IMDA. This is a government agency in Singapore responsible for looking at and driving digital economy in Singapore.
Okay, now guys, we've heard a lot of innovators, we've heard a lot of CEOs, developers, everything speaking about how we can use blockchain and decentralization, and now we have someone working with the government, and that's fascinating, by the way. How are they looking at decentralization in general? How is Singapore looking at that?
So I guess decentralization is an interesting concept for us because I think for many of us, we are very attuned to thinking about things from a very centralized perspective. So I think when it comes to decentralized, it brings about many possibilities, and blockchain is a technology that makes use of decentralized concept. So I think today, many of the use cases that we see in blockchain, some are in the financial sector, some are in payments, others are really focusing on supply chain issues and solving operational efficiency, transaction issues, and reducing friction across organizations. The exciting thing about decentralization is I think also the opportunity to create business model innovation, because as the centralized concept evolves into decentralized, I think there will be new business models that are being created as well. So that's probably the exciting part that we're thinking about.
Okay, so what made you fascinated yourself personally with blockchain?
Well, firstly, I come from the technology team, so we always look at new emerging technologies that are exciting. For blockchain, I think what's exciting is really some of the new business model innovations that we have seen. So for example, many of you would be familiar with basically players like Uber and Airbnb that have a digital platform that does the matching between your rides and your riders and so on. However, in the decentralized world, there was an interesting project called Lazuz that basically tried to do the same as what Uber does, but without a central player such as Uber. So they had incentive schemes built in order for the community to contribute in different perspectives. One is from the code contribution and development of the website. The other is incentives baked in to encourage them to share information and share knowledge about this network, so that the whole network basically functions on its own, community-driven, without a centralized player such as an Uber-like entity. And that is probably one example of a business model innovation that sounds really interesting and exciting. There are a lot of questions around how to get this moving in a sustainable manner, but at the same time, it's pretty fascinating.
Okay, so what would you like to see approached leveraging blockchain technology that you haven't seen just as yet? Is there a company or is there a sector that you'd like to see take on blockchain as a technology so they can truly scale?
Actually, I think blockchain has been described as being disrupting many industries, and there was a study done by CB Insights about the number of industries that blockchain can transform, and every year they update the number. Absolutely. So I think as of now, it's probably about 55 industries. I think there's probably a lot more, and it's probably the exciting part is that it's not a specific sector. Blockchain is very foundational technology, and it can potentially impact many sectors. Right. So beyond the 55 that has been listed, probably many more in time to come. Okay. And we probably don't even know them today.
Right. Are you focused more on the for-profit or non-for-profit interaction between governments and other agencies?
Okay, so for us, as a government agency, we play both a regulatory hat in the telecoms sector as well as an industry development role. So specifically in the area of blockchain, it's very much from a technology industry development role. Government is obviously non-profit, so there could be some conversations about how blockchain could be applied in the context of government. But because blockchain is also a collaborative industry, it's not about government doing blockchain alone, but maybe in certain transactions, bringing in private sector to collaborate together in probably operational efficiency kind of use cases. As our developmental head, we also work with companies and private sector in blockchain, and that's probably where not so much that we play a role in doing anything, but actually catalyzing companies to be aware about the benefits of blockchain technology, the pitfalls, and get them to decide whether it makes sense for the business. And in this case of our work with the companies, it will be very much from a commercial perspective. Does it make sense for them today? Are there enough business benefits and ROI? Or perhaps it's something that they will consider later. For some of them, they want to be the first mover to move into this and build blockchain networks so that they can also have a potential to be the winner in the game. So really it's two perspectives. Government's standard role is usually from a non-profit perspective, but our development role with the companies is really then helping them to look at it from a different perspective and seeing where companies can also benefit from a profit perspective.
Oh, jeez. That is a lot, and I'm always impressed with what Singapore is doing, but having you here, hearing about how they're embracing this, and in such a way, you don't normally hear that. You hear it every now and again, but you don't normally hear that. So it's fascinating. When we spoke about working in more collaborative efforts, are you finding that there's opportunities to work with other governments as well in blockchain? Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
So certainly yes. So this week is also coinciding with the FinTech Festival as well as Switch. In this event, I think we have seen many international delegations flying into Singapore and engaging with us. So there are also other efforts overseas, building blockchain ecosystems overseas. And a good example I wanted to cite is the Netherlands. They've had blockchain projects in the Netherlands running for a while already, and they formed a Dutch blockchain coalition. So when they flew into Singapore recently, they also met up with us and started exploring what can we do to connect the Dutch and the Singapore ecosystems together, share knowledge, share experience, and maybe foster cross-border use cases.
Wow. This is a completely different alliance in a decentralized way. It's actually quite fascinating. It'd be interesting to see. So are you using this as an incubator almost for other governments that they can look at as a model? Or are you taking from the other models, like the Netherlands had something to offer, but it's Singapore, I know Singapore has something fantastic to offer the universe. But are you taking that in a more collective manner, or are you taking Singapore as the lead to say, hey, we've learned so much, take this and use this model elsewhere?
So I think it's a little bit of both. I was in Zouk last year and we learned quite a bit from the VCs in their approach in growing the blockchain ecosystem.
Okay.
Now Zouk is Crypto Valley and they've been very successful at it. So we took a few ideas, borrowed a couple of ideas in terms of ecosystem building, brought it into Singapore, and we also realized that the Dutch also doing something, but in a slightly different way. So I think it's a little bit of borrowing some ideas from other countries, maybe contextualizing it in the local environment, and then also in a way sharing this knowledge with other countries as we engage across the world. I've hosted delegations from emerging economies that also came to Singapore looking for blockchain players in specific areas. Maybe they were interested in energy, maybe they were interested in education and so on. And when we introduced them to some of these companies, what they were interested to do is to bring these companies back to them in their home country because they wanted to seed and start blockchain projects in that specific sector. So in a way, it's a little bit of both, borrowing ideas as well as sharing some knowledge with the other economies, and really is facilitating that richer exchange. Just like they say, blockchain is a collaborative technology. Companies have to collaborate in order to bring things together. I think across borders, countries also have to collaborate in learning from each other and growing, I think, overall a collective knowledge base about how to move the technology forward.
Wow, I guess this is the true test of education is application. They really wanted to take that and apply it immediately, and that's a testament to how well you guys are doing here. So what do you have on the horizon within the next 6 months to a year? And what kind of results is the government expecting from those tests that you put out in the next 6 months?
So I think, to be very honest, if you look at most of the industry reports that talk about the future potential of blockchain, some of them will end their projections in the year 2030. This is year 2019 now, so there's probably about 10 more years to go. And I think most people believe that the eventual benefits of blockchain will come, not literally in 6 months or even a year, but I think in time to come over probably maybe up to a decade, because it is a foundational technology. So for us, I think in the immediate next 6 months or even a year, it's probably more experimentation, understanding of what it takes to bring the technology forward, or understanding what is the best use of this technology, and circulating or maybe codification of some of this knowledge so that collectively we can upskill our understanding of the technology.
There's a few folks that I'd like to introduce you to that have that exact same mentality, and they are part of other organizations. You may know them already, but it sounds like we're speaking the same language, and to find that in this community right now at the top tier is fantastic. It should say a lot about what's happening in the community behind blockchain and what's happening with the leaders out there, as they're truly adopting this, if you haven't seen this from the IBMs and the other big guys in the world.
Yep.
In the United States, are you seeing that same government approach as ambassadors or however their representatives are administered? Are they shooting over to Singapore and learning as well?
I'll be quite honest to say that our engagements with the United States have been less on the government level, but actually there's quite a bit of activity happening in the industry as well. So for example, okay, even if you don't look at blockchain, but any of the other technologies, Silicon Valley, they're very forward-looking in some of the new technology. So I think this is an area where we've been following and looking at. Admittedly, I would say that personally for myself, a bit less engagements on the G2G front or from government officials.
Oh, that's interesting. It's not, I don't think anyone's surprised there. And but we'd like American government to get on the ball. We don't want to get left behind right now. We've got to plant some roots. You're hearing it here in Singapore. So if you could give entrepreneurs, innovators, a little bit of advice of how to engage with you, how to follow up with some ideas or proposals or actual product that they may have, how could they reach out? How should they move ahead and engage with you in the organization?
So I think last year we cooked up and hatched up the idea of a blockchain engagement platform. We have heard through various forums about the importance of collaboration in blockchain technology, and we came up with the idea of a blockchain engagement platform to drive collaboration, initially within the ecosystem in Singapore, but now with all these international delegations visiting us across international borders as well. So we developed the idea and we ended up working with Tribe Accelerator and Open Nodes. So for any companies that wish to reach out to us and get in touch with the local ecosystem in Singapore, go hit yourself onto opennodes.com and you'll probably find some information where you can get yourself on board and probably get to know a few players. There's also IMDA website, but as a government agency, we probably don't look as cool as Open Nodes, but really I think that's where important for government to collaborate with private sector. Government does certain things better and private sector does something better. When you work together collectively, everyone becomes stronger.
Okay, and I can't think of a better note to leave on than exactly that. I thank you so much, Veronica, for taking the time. DLive Nation, make sure you reach out and see what's happening in Singapore.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
you. Told you, smooth.